Good morning. Happy Sunday. What a blessing to be able to wake up this morning. So I hope that you had a moment to just give thanks for being alive today, being able to have another day on this earth with your loved ones. God, it's amazing. And so I just wanted to say I'm thankful to be here, thankful to see another day, thankful to be able to deliver another video for you. And I'm also thankful for you. Thank you for coming to my page. Thank you for leaving comments. Thank you for liking. And thank you for asking for more. I hope that I can keep doing this and delivering what may be helpful to you in your journey. Um, this is not financial advice. This is truly just me working through the charts and giving you an idea of what I see. As always, you should do your own research. You should always look to validate what I'm saying. And if you see something different, let me know. I like the engagement. I like to learn from others. So feel free to leave comments if you find that maybe I might have missed something, or maybe there's a stock that I didn't cover that you are watching. But we're going to go ahead and get into some stocks today. We're going to look to see what's ahead on the economic side and what we should be prepared for going into the week. So I'm on my home screen trading view, and I am going to pull up the calendar. So again, as always, there's economic earnings and dividends. We can look at earnings, right? And you can move over to the next week and you can see everything that has earnings coming up. Domino's has earnings, Clearway Energy has earnings. Let's see what else I'm seeing in here. There's quite a bit of earnings for next week. So if anything is catching your attention, just take a moment to be aware of what stocks have earnings. And oh, look, Tim. We've been talking about Tim quite a bit. Riot has earnings. Um, Hims has earnings. Chegg has earnings. Zoom has earnings. So some names are definitely standing out. Yeah, so take a moment to look into who has earnings going into next week. Personally, I like to be further ahead of earnings. I'm finding that that is your best practice when it comes to planning earnings, is to kind of get ahead of it. Who has earnings coming up in March? Who has earnings coming up in April? Where are they now in the stock in the chart? So just a tip, take a moment, look at what has earnings coming up next week and what's ahead for earnings in the next month or 60 days. Now we are going to look at our economic calendar. It is so important to be aware of what economic data is dropping and how it could potentially affect your positions. So going into next week, you can see we have some data, not anything too heavy, for Monday. House data on Tuesday. So here's something interesting. We also have consumer confidence dropping at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, something to be aware of. Do some research on what that affects. How does that move the market? Does it even have any impact on the market? But I mean, this is all speaking on consumer confidence. So you have to ask yourself. So right now we can see the forecast is 102.1 and the prior was 104.1. On Wednesday, I thought I saw that we had, okay, so we have home data on Wednesday, a lot of crude oil as well. And then on February, we have our unemployment data core, PCE, durable goods, jobless claims. Yep. So again, just be aware we have some Fed speaking. These are all things that you want to stay ahead of. And I think you've seen it before from some of the pros in this game, speaking on why it's important to stay ahead, not just on a technical side, but also what could impact your stocks from an economic data standpoint. So I do make a point to be aware of what's happening. Let's take a quick scan of the heat map. I won't spend too much time on it. I think we've already reviewed how you can use your heat map to your advantage. You can use it to find stocks that are down and maybe find some opportunities to jump into it. Now, obviously, if something is down, you might want to look at the weekly, not just the daily, but the weekly, the monthly, and see if you're getting a potential buy and if it's a strong stock. We're going to look at what closed the week strong. and I may have posted this already. Let's look at 3% so you can really see what's standing out. So we have T, Verizon, Deere, Home, TXN has been, I think we talked about TXN recently on another video. PM, Coca-Cola, ABBV, J&J, MRK, 6%. So yeah, there's green. There's green somewhere in the market. Again, you have to use your tools to look for the green. If you're not a person confident in trading any of the downside, right? So what was down the most? Let's look at 3%. Google. And Google had some news. Oracle got a 3% drop. Netflix pulled back. Palantir for the week was down 14%. You have to ask yourself, is there more downside or are we finding support and maybe we can start to move to the upside? UNH lost 11%, almost 12% for the week. All great chances to go look at the stock and see what's truly happening. What is 11% on manufacturer? GEV. Cat had a slight pullback. I think I spoke on Cat and posted something in a Discord of my thoughts on Cat. Thought we were going to get a solid double bottom, but I didn't react. I think I even posted, make sure that you uh, do some research on it. And what I was going to wait for was an alert, and that alert didn't happen. So I think we have some more downside to find support on Cat if they don't pull back from here. So if you didn't know what I was doing, just real quick, you can click more into the sector. So you see how it's kind of can't really see what's happening. Go to commercials. Now you can see what's up, what's down, and you can also see what's up under commercials. Not too much happening there for the week. All right, so I don't want to spend too much time here. I've already done a video on stock heat map, and you can just take some time during your spare time to play around with these features and empower yourself to start to do more analyzing of what's happening in each of the sectors and maybe where you can find potential opportunities. All right, so we are going to get into the charts and we're going to look at some stocks that were requested. First, I'm actually going to start with ZOM. I haven't looked at the chart, so we'll start with ZOM. All right, so we have ZOM up here and we have it on the weekly. Now, if you are new here, have not seen my previous videos, I do use a chart system called the Wolf chart. So everything here has already been put together in one system that leads me to a more confident trade setup. So if I understand how to utilize my system, which is the Wolf chart system, confirmation system, then I know when to start taking positions, how to take positions confidently, and navigate through the market. As someone who's busy and actually has a full-time job, I don't always have enough time to get into my chart setups in the morning. Sometimes I'm hitting the ground running. So it's very convenient for me to have a system that already tells me what's happening and I just follow it. It is truly okay if you don't have the wolf chart or a chart system and you are trying to understand how to just read the stock market. You still can just use your EMAs and still find support and resistance, find market structure, and begin to trade confidently. The most basic idea here is that when you have your price above your EMAs, then we're looking at a bullish move. When you have price falling below your EMAs, you're looking at pullbacks, especially when you see it on higher time frames. Okay, so those are things that you can still empower yourself and begin to identify. I can do it both ways. I love my wolf chart, but I can teach and understand how to analyze a chart just with the most basic setup. So don't feel discouraged if you don't have my chart system, but if you're interested in my chart system, I that was created by Sean Harris. I'll go ahead and link that in the comments for you to check out. Also, he has a video where he explains his system more for anyone interested. All right, let's talk about ZOM. So for Zom, there really isn't anything here on the weekly outside the fact that we kind of had an inside week. And the reason why I can say that is because we haven't broke out of the high of the previous week or we haven't broke under the low of the previous week. So for me, I just call that an inside day. But there is some things to note on the weekly that is very interesting. One, on the weekly, based on my wolf chart confirmation system, I'm getting that arc. Well, this system comes with a customized EMA called the wolf trend moving average. So if you ever see me speaking on it, this confirmation here where we get an arc, an inverse arc, and we get the green crossing over the red gives us a confirmation that we're starting to see a trend reversal. Again, we're on the weekly. And another very interesting thing here is that I have my 200 weighted moving average that the stock pulled back to. And you can kind of see they bounced around and tested it, bumped above it, came back to it, but it's holding support on the weekly pretty good when the price comes to this 200 weighted moving average. And so what I'm looking at here is a really nice break over resistance. And so I think I've spoken to a few people about ZOM, and I was mentioning that 108 was like a significant area. And on the weekly, you can see we've kind of conquered that. If we can hold above that, that's a good sign for ZOM and start to move price above some of these highs, these previous week highs. We have a nice chance to keep moving up. As you can see, we don't have, well, here's our next conquer. We need to get above this 12 EMA. Right now, that EMA is red. That is because we are not above it. We're not holding above it. So once we can get candles above this on a weekly, that's also another good indicator. And we have a nice upside test to 119 on the weekly. Again, we have crude oil data. I think we saw that on dropping on Wednesday. So that'll be something to watch. And on the daily, I like that, again, we have an inside day. We're above the trend line and we got a pretty good pullback. A nice test to about 113 resistance here between, maybe we can test 114 at a high, but our next challenge would be breaking that 114 from the daily. So again, even if you look at it from the daily, it's just the inside day. This candle is inside the previous day's high and low. So if you're a person that has practiced ORB, you kind of look at it the same way when you are looking at the daily. We are just within that previous day range, previous day high and low. I do mark those. So for me, I would personally mark previous high of this candle, previous low of this candle, and see where it takes us from there. So we'll get some resistance around 112. So maybe we can bump up to 112 and just keep working our way up. Overall, I do like that we're above the trend line. We're above my EMAs. And so I'll have my eyes on ZOM as well. One thing to call out is that ZOM did really well in some previous months, testing a high of 123.79. And if I'm correct, that should be their all-time high. Let me just make sure. Nope, I'm wrong. Let's zoom out even more on ZOM, get a better idea. Oh no, that's about right. Yep, all-time highs on ZOM were reached, and then we got that pullback. So on the monthly, you can see where it signaled that we were going to get some pullbacks, right? We get that arc confirmation where the red is now crossing over. Same thing happened in March. When it was almost this high, same thing happened in October. And so since then, look at the sell-off in 1 month, we lost $10. And it looks like we found support at this 104.76 area. I'm just going to leave that. I think it's kind of based off of this candle right here. To the exact dollar amount, 104.76. All right, so ZOM looks good. Again, you can keep in mind that we do need to hold some support over that 108 area and then just follow to see exactly where we can take things from there. We want to see support hold and we want to start seeing the stock continue to move further up. I won't spend too much time on ZOM. We can move on to another stock. So 1 second, let's see what else was on our list. Someone told me that my voice is soothing in the comments, and I'm just I laugh because I kind of cringe when I hear myself in the playback, and I'm a little stuffy this morning, so hopefully I don't sound too crazy. All right, so someone mentioned Cava, and I think it's worthy to look at Cava. I think they were saying there was a pullback on Cava, and I actually have not been tracking this one for a bit. Oh, yeah, nasty pullback. We lost a 200 on a daily. Okay, so Cava. Cava has earnings on the 25th, Tuesday, the 25th after hours. They have pulled back for the week and lost $23 at their gain. That's a pretty strong pullback. I'm honestly mad it wasn't on my radar. Again, we're not afraid of red days. That's an opportunity to make money on the downside with the pullback. Just jump in your puts with confidence, and a $23 drop in a week is somebody's salary. So you can make your salary just playing this one pullback. I don't know if there's any news. I haven't done a research, but yeah, this is a pretty significant pullback. Now, here's what's interesting is that they are pulling back to this fair value gap on the weekly. And so we'll look to see if we start to find some support now that we've touched this fair value gap and see if we start to see a retracement back to test some highs. So we're looking at it from the weekly. The overall trend has been bullish for quite some time. And even more so towards the towards August, reaching a high point here in November, and then we start to see some of those pullbacks. And so our ARC system on the weekly gave us that in December. And so we found some support here. I actually have it on my chart at 110.34, but we broke under that. So again, we'll have to see what happens next week now that we broke under it. Maybe we come back to 104. Just keep in mind, I can't say for sure. We have to see how the market reacts pre-earnings, which is Monday and Tuesday, and then they'll post their earnings on after hours on the 25th. On the daily, we have lost let's zoom in a little bit so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. On the daily, we've lost the 200 weighted moving average. We're well above my EMAs, the 12 and the ARC system with trend moving average. And yeah, it's just been a sell-off. Actually, if you were really watching Kava and you followed, you start to see these candles change, giving you signals that we are probably going to start seeing that pull back. And then once price fell under the EMA, even did a little bit of bouncing to test it, it's kind of like that break under and then that retest, and then we reject it trying to get above this EMA, if that makes sense. And now we've lost the 200. And we've also fallen below the trend line here that was started in January, on January 13th. So, this looks interesting. I have to wonder if we would even come all the way down this low, like 90s would be insane. But we're also in a fair value gap on the weekly, so that could start to help change things. But everything else is showing a pretty solid drop all the way down to this 98 area. I'm just looking, I don't see any support outside of what we saw on the weekly chart. I go through all the time frames to see what I see. Now, they are holding support. This is just Friday for sure. So I would probably measure Friday's high and low and just keep an eye on what they do because they're testing some waters around this 107.55. Start to lose 107.55 again, looks a little sketchy to me. Yep. I'm gonna actually keep Kava on my watch list. I'm looking to see if we need to start this a little bit more or if we found support. But remember, earnings on Tuesday, you don't want to take any risks on their earnings and, you know, find out that where I thought they found support and they're going to run for earnings, they do the complete opposite and keep dropping to those lower levels I was showing you. Now, let's just look real quick at what their earnings were. So they had a great earnings on in November, really good. They had a nice pre-earnings run, and I don't see anything there. Good revenue. Yeah, I'm gonna keep Cava on my watch, see what they do with earnings. All right, let's move on to another one. We have APLD. Mm. All right, so APLD, what are we doing? Let's look at their all-time high for a moment. On the monthly chart, we have all-time high at 34.19 for this stock. Um, a lot of people caught a lot of the hype on APLD recently in 2024. And if you were able to catch that ride, they made some nice comeback moves. They are currently above the 200 weighted moving average. They are above, they're bullish and on the monthly, and they're looking like they're trying to break back over this trend line. So you see this trend line has been here since 2022 in June. And you can see when price is above it, above your EMA, things look good. And then we lost the trend line. And so now it looks like price just keep coming back to try to break above it on the monthly. Just hasn't done that yet on the monthly. Okay, so cleaner entry from where we are now would be that breakout. On the weekly chart, there's a supply zone that we're in that is about 1348. If I get exact, let's see, 1350. So yeah, they're trying to work through a supply zone that's been here for a little bit, and so price is coming back to test it. You can see when we wicked inside of it, there was that rejection and pullback, and so they're still above the previous week's high, which is good. Another break and hold is the high of 1020, which they're above as well. So resistance right now sits at 1119. Then you can work your way to about 1163, and then we get to the supply zone again. So if they keep trying to come back and bump through this supply zone, they could potentially break out of it on the weekly. And then as long as price is holding, like I said, above that 1350, there's a nice opportunity for them to continue to gap up. They do have earnings May 20, I'm sorry, May 9th, and they posted earnings January 14th. Good revenue, good earnings. So, you have to wonder, are they going to break through that supply zone? It's worth keeping an eye on APLD. On the daily, they're also working through a supply zone that they've wicked through. So price did jump out of it and reached a high of 1248. So that was Friday. So they gave a nice move on Friday. They're trying to clear this against zone where we have sellers positioned. And if they can, let's just say we break above 1128, somewhere around there, then we'll go ahead and retrace back to this high from Friday, 1248, and then you just play it from there. It's good to look to the left and see what we have ahead. So that change of character at 1205. We're going to have a fair value gap at 1319 when we had a sell-off, a significant sell-off in April, which honestly, once they did that drop, they kind of took a long time to recover. So we'll probably come back and test 1324 if they're going to continue a bullish move. Remember, they have to break through a little bit of a supply zone. That's going to be your resistance, and then they can start to retrace. They can clear this fair value gap on the daily with enough buyers and a bullish move. So just see what happens. They would probably react and get some choppiness once they get around 13. Measure it here, 1320. And then breaking through all of that, they can get to about 1470 and so forth. I'm going to keep APLD on my watch as well. So thanks for whoever brought that to my attention. I'm going to set some alerts when I go back and prep my charts for the week. Moving on, we had Dell as another request, so we'll get through this. I may not get through everyone's request just for the sake of time, but we're going to try to get through maybe two more. All right, so what do we have for Dell? Choppiness here because we're in a supply zone. Let's zoom out for a moment. Have they closed this gap on the monthly yet? They have not. Mm, this wick came through. So right now, Dell pretty much has support around 104. This is the monthly. They've come low as 98.37, but they close. Yeah, they've come as low this month as 98.37. Previous support was 104. They lost that. Came as low as 98.37 on the monthly. From the weekly, I like what I'm seeing. From the weekly, they are we're about to get this arc confirmation, inverse arc confirmation that gives a signal that the trend on the weekly is truly reversing. We're already above the 12 EMA, and price needs to keep holding above the 117.16 price. That gives us a nice opportunity to come eventually test around the high of 125.77. Above that, we'll get to this fair value gap and test 129.65. They have earnings in, oh, what, next week? It's 27th? Is that next week? This week? Yep. Thursday. They have earnings Thursday. Um, and if we look at it from the daily, we're choppy. We're in a nice choppy zone, but we are above the trend line. This wolf trend moving average is starting to catch up with price because we're in this supply zone. We may get an arc and an additional pullback. If we do, so let's see, they close at 117.60. They're trying to break through this. Again, buyers are there, but they're fighting a lot of resistance here. All this red is just choppy resistance. So that's why you see that we haven't had a significant move to break out. So honestly, if they don't clear just 129.71 to get a more cleaner move, which would lead us to test this trend line, break above it, and potentially get around 142-ish. Dell has earnings, so you can see what the market gives. You just have to remember on a daily, it's going to be a lot of choppiness here. I'm going to look to see what happens post earnings on Dell. I'm not going to do too much here. They're in the 200, they're above the 200 here, but again, we're getting that arc catching them. So may get more of a pullback from Dell. Yeah, that's a lot of choppiness. Wait to see what they do with earnings. You'll have better direction since earnings is going to be on Thursday. Now, granted, if pre-earnings you catch some nice moves up or down, that's cool too. I'm just going to wait to see what happens after earnings. We're going to do one more bonus, and then I'm going to jump into a few of the stocks that most people are kind of talking about, and then we'll wrap things up. I have BKNG as a request, so I want to make sure and cover that. Oops, how did I do this? Sometimes I zoom in my main screen and now I can't remember how to zoom out of it. So do I? Okay, I'm going to close this. and come back to this. All right, BKNG. Earnings was on the 20th. We're getting a arc forming, inverse arc forming. They're above the 12 EMA on the weekly, and they have resistance all the way up here at $5,337. Overall trend on the monthly, they gave a pullback, but they are also looking pretty strong. Their next earnings is going to be in April. Let's go a little quick on this one. On the daily, they're trying to break and hold above this trend line that's on my chart. They are testing the 12 EMA here, but I'm also getting that arc as well. So we have to see, are they going to pull back to this demand zone here, or are they going to retrace back? So if they did retrace back to the upside, they're going to test some of these previous highs, and that could potentially act as resistance until they are breaking above those. So you can keep an eye on them. That was a pretty strong sellout, but we do know that the market did pull back. They pulled back $27 on Friday. Kind of reacted the same way most did on Friday when we got those pullbacks. I don't follow this particular stock very much. Bookings, travels demand. I feel like they did the same thing as Airbnb because Airbnb had a really nice pullback on Friday as well. All right, support. Support is holding pretty good around this area here, around $4,975. So you can keep an eye on that support. If they do pull back, they're going to just come back and try to start finding support in some of these demand zones. I won't spend too much time on them. They do, again, look like they're getting a pullback, but on the weekly, they're holding strong from a previous pullback in December, and they've reclaimed the 12 EMA, and we may get that arc. If we don't, because this is a pretty strong rejection, that wick is pretty significant, which we know Friday they lost about $27. So maybe we'll pull back and test this 12 again. We don't want to lose it on the weekly because then we'll just keep pulling back to some of these other lows. Now, Palantir. Everybody's talking about Palantir. So we're just going to take a moment to check them out. On the weekly, we're getting pretty close to where we can come back and test this, yeah, this 85.22. In fact, I want an alert on that. 85.22. This is how I set my alerts. I'm just going to put weekly support. Let's see if we can come back and test that. Gotta look at that from a weekly standpoint as this has been a resistance area, right? Like you can see here in December, we came back and we hit 84.80. Here, 85.22, we broke. We broke out. Now we're getting the opportunity to pull back, and it puts us pretty close on the weekly to my 12 EMA, which just means that we'll be pulling back to test a 12 EMA. And as long as we have support at 85.22, that actually looks pretty good. So again, I expect more pullback from Palantir. And if they do, I need to see them hold support at 85.22. Now we're in a weekly fair value gap, so we've seen that they've given us some nice moves up after they pull back and then they pull back again. So it seems like they're still trying to sell off a bit more. I don't want to cause any panic. This is what I see right now is that I don't see buyers too strong here. Switch to Hakanashi, and yeah, you could say that buyers still have control when you switch to those candles and smooth things out. But on the daily, you can see who's starting to take over when you switch to Hakanashi. Also, we're getting the arc. Again, it does lead me to believe maybe we'll come here. Oh, I want to switch back to regular candles. I just was smoothing things out, guys, when I switched the candles, but I do want to stay on our regular candles. And yeah, we got the arc. And once that arc happened, February 19th, you can see how this confirmation system works. Look at the pullback. And so we're still sort of inside the price close above this high. So the high Thursday was 107.40. And yeah, we closed under that. And we just have to look to see what happens. But we may be coming back down to 95.80 and again under 95.80. If we get that break under, we're coming back down to this area here, which is what I have labeled as weekly support at 85.22. That does not mean you don't have an opportunity on the smaller time frames, which I won't go through, to find trade setups, right? This is a pretty wide range. If you're trading Palantir between 107.40 and 95.80. What's been really significant, even with the wick of this candle, is that I knew that price needed to hold above 107.40 and really start to prove itself. And that just didn't happen. We did go and test 109.70.07, which means again, you can still get good trades inside this range, and they'll even kind of give you a little tease breaking out. But see what the wick did, it rejected at the 12 and started to pull back. So we closed the day on Palantir at 101.35. We'll have to see where we open. And also if we lose this low of 104, 10, sorry, 95.80. So you can keep that in your charts as an alert. 95.80. We're probably going to come back and pull back a little bit more as low as 85.22 is what I have for right now. We do want to see support hold there. If it doesn't, with such a wide gap, which I do think what's going to happen is we'll close this gap. But if it doesn't hold there, then we'll likely start coming to test this trend line. I just don't know if we'll get that low. I can't say for sure. Nevertheless, you just need to be prepared. I think most of the pros have already been telling you at all-time highs, you want to start considering where your take profits are, where you move your stop loss to in profit, because as you can see, once the sell-off happened, on the 19th, we lost $12.56, and we pulled back even more the next day. So they're teasing us with that little pop we had on Friday, and then they just did the same thing, right back. And they closed just as low. So it's still kind of an inside day until we break the low of this candle. Okay, let's move off of Palantir. And I definitely want to share with you guys Baba. Baba looks so good. All right, so one thing we want to see is where has this stock been? So we know where it can go. So Kaya Baba is all the way up here at 319.32 on the monthly. And we hit a high of 145.30 so far. So we're looking really strong. This candle has $44.91 gain. So that means that so far this month, Baba has gained $44.91. They had a really nice earnings reaction. I think they have a deal with Apple. And so when we zoom out to the weekly, we have a weekly floating candle. So we can get a nice bump to 160 from here. And so if you find a nice pullback entry, which I have it at about 138.27 also, and watching what they do around 140, just as a psychological number. but my ultimate support I have is at 138.27. So I have my alert set and Baba's still my watch because I want to see where I can get. Uh-oh, I think I have an alert. Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, I want to see what kind of pullback we can get on Baba and then also any breakout. And again, we can come all the way in from the weekly to this 164.13 area. Maybe even wick a little bit through it. It will get choppy around here. Once they break out of this on the weekly, you can see we can come all the way to 211.40. It's just a rough number. I'm not measuring any candles to give exact here on the weekly. All right, so now that we have earnings out the way and we can see how the stock market investors are reacting to BABA, so earnings was on the 2020 at pre-market. We know that we want to break above 144.51 and start closing holding that. So they closed at 143.75. They were as high as 145.30. It was Friday, so maybe we what we experienced was just some take profit. Look for that break above 144.51. Above 144.51, 145.30 would be your next step just to measure the high. And then above that, again, you can see that we would get pretty good confirmations. And I still want to see them come and test about 130, my 138.27. So Baba looks really good. Add them to your watch list. Measure. I'm gonna keep watching this candle here, and I want them to break out of. Actually, gonna add an anchor VWAP. So price is above it right now. And so on the daily, what I have is 139.63 right now. Maybe again, so that puts us pretty close again to pulling back as low as 138.27, which what you want to see a pullback to test this anchor VWAP too, and then have a bounce. So you can always add an anchor VWAP to your chart. And I'll give I want to give an example, but for the sake of time, I won't. Maybe I'll make another video. But there's pros out there that have done quite a few videos on anchor VWAP, especially with earnings gap up. And so you can follow that along. And what you want to see is price above it. But if we ever come to it, you don't want price to start falling under because then you can expect some pullbacks to test some lower supports. Works just as much as the EMAs that I already have on my chart. All right, so I won't spend too much time on Baba. What I want to say is that Baba looks really good. They look really good. Um, let's move on to QQQ. All right. Now, I, as many others did, were able to be privileged to catch this beautiful move on QQQ. Um, this was a pullback after we reached all-time highs last week, which we are going to measure at 540.81. And price closing under 539.15. I also have a bit of a worry there that we may get more pullback on QQQ. Um, Again, this is almost like giving us a double top. Boom. Price could not hold above. So on the daily, we're getting that 1, 2. I don't like that. We're also potentially forming the arc. I'm definitely going to be watching for a crossover here that tells me that we may have more downside for QQQ. On the weekly, again, pretty significant sell-off from hitting all-time highs. You know, when a stock hits all-time highs, you got to at some point anticipate a pullback. I'm wondering if we're going to come back and test a little bit lower. We don't want to lose this 524 area, maybe like 524.60, because then we'll keep pulling back. But here's what I think why I kind of protected myself once we started to reach here. Once we reach this supply zone, I'm sorry, this demand zone, we just know there's going to be some support. Buyers are interested here. And you can also look to see that we turned this The support line I have, 525.94. We've came here before in the past and we've rejected here. So we've kind of weren't able to break out of it. Eventually we got the gap up. Eventually we pulled, well, we had a pretty significant gap down. Came back to it, pulled back again, came back. So this area I do like following 521.97 and 525.94. So if we start to get under to 521.97 and we start to lose that, then we likely can come to this 519. And if they want, they can pull this thing to 515.55, puts us around our trend line and some support that I have from the wolf chart on the 4 hour. So I was looking to see where we might find some support, and this demand zone actually looks like a area of support. If they, and it's been here since February 12th, they can pop out of this. It'll probably be a pretty strong pop out, but they'll be tested around 530.21. Again, you can measure your day. Keep in mind that we do have that demand zone on the 4 hour, and this is still a big wide range to trade from if you're day trading. Uh, QQQ. Let's do one more. I don't want to keep you guys too long. A lot of people have eyes on TIM, TEM. Oops, I didn't realize I spelled support so crazy here. All right, so they have earnings Monday, and the pullback has been real. They can still come from the daily, what I'm seeing, and test 66.25. That's a pretty strong pullback. I'm just saying that they could still do that before earnings. Okay, here's where they found support. On the 4 hour, they are, oh yeah, they can still come back and test. What was the daily support? 66.25. I don't know. I feel like they can still come back to the 66.25 area. Oops. Yeah, they can still pull back to 66.25. Measure your previous day high and low. They definitely broke the low of the previous day, which was Thursday, and Friday closed much lower. They're pretty close to the 66.25. Under that, 56.33. Again, I can't say that's going to happen with earnings right there. I just find that all interesting where we are. Look at this too. We're getting that arc confirmation. We're still in the 12 EMA. Trend is still bullish overall. Just remember this is a nasty pullback, and so closing off of the 12 EMA doesn't look good. The only thing that I just say here with Tim's is just again, earnings will be a make or break. They can have that pullback a little bit more on Monday during the day, and then you might see either a huge move upside or downside, or I can't say huge, just a move up or down based on how the market reacts to earnings. So you don't want to be gambling here, especially with a pullback like this that they're getting. A few others to keep in mind if you're just watching. Nike had a deal with Kim Kardashian, I think it's Skims. So they've been trying to break through some resistance. Keep them on your watch as well. SoFi has been on the talk. I'm still waiting to see where SoFi finds true support. Um, I don't know if that has happened yet, but when it does, they'll have an opportunity to start pushing their way back up to the 20s with time. So you just want to look if you're wanting to be an investor in SoFi to find support. And I don't know about options on SoFi. I just think they may be day trading it or trading the week if you find some clear direction. They just haven't proven themselves enough for me. from this pullback. Once they find support, I'll be more convinced about what's happening. We're going to stop here. I don't want to take too long and make this video longer than it needs to be. Again, I thank you for taking the time to watch. I know it is about an hour long each time, but I do make sure to take my time to get through the stocks and show and share what I see in the charts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what else is on your watch list. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you find this information helpful to you. And I will keep looking to do this. Again, thanks for tuning in. I will actually try to get a midweek report out to you guys. Let's see how Monday, Tuesday goes. And then maybe what I'll do is post a video Tuesday evening going into Wednesday. And or I'll do a Thursday video just to give us a heads up of what maybe we can catch on Friday. Thanks again. Have a good evening, a good day. Happy Sunday, everyone. Bye.